Hi, I'm Ali Zendrian, the editor-in-chief of Brand News, and this is the Financial Services News You Might Have Missed podcast. This is where I uncover news gems and I give them a little more chance to sparkle. I'm joined by my trusted co-host and my financial advisor, Brandon Galisi of Galisi Financial. Brandon, how you doing?
I am doing well, Ali. Coming off a long weekend before the 4th of July break. We went up to, I think I shared on the last podcast, to June Lake. My in-laws have a cabin up there, so my wife and I went to Yosemite, which was nice, and also I'm a big fan of mountain biking, so there's a downhill mountain bike park at Mammoth, and that was a lot of fun. No injuries, a lot of calories burned, and it was a really fun day. It was pretty exhausting.
Well, that's good, and I'm glad that you are not injured. Thank you for coming back to the podcast in one piece.
Yep, one piece.
I appreciate it. First in our news this week, so this is an AtoZ Communications client, Rossby Financial. They just announced a deal with Milemarker. Rossby Financial just announced a deal with Milemarker. In this partnership, advisors get their own unified dashboard. So rather than having to look in a lot of disparate places for all of their business data, they can look in just one spot. Personally, as a business owner, if I had just all of my information straight in front of me, I know that would make my life easier. But obviously, I am not a financial advisor, and you are. So curious what you think about having a unified dashboard like that.
Sounds really cool. I don't necessarily have one right now. I mean, if I want to go check to see, say, profitability metrics, I go into accounting software. And then I have my own Google spreadsheet to track certain data points like initial phone calls, things like that. And then I can also check my CRM. So right now, I would not say that I have a unified dashboard by any stretch of the imagination. It's a non-unified, disunified. Anyways, not together, dashboard. Yeah. So I think it'll be helpful. I mean, I think of it as, dashboard, scorecard. I mean, if you can look at key metrics to your business and it looks like it's customizable as well, which is nice, then that's going to be helpful. Data alone is pretty worthless, but data, whenever it's wrapped into ratios or metrics, again, that are important, that's when you can start to make decisions. So the fact that they're unifying this process and making it a one-stop where you can look at all the key business metrics that you want to see. Yeah, I absolutely could see that being valuable for not just advisors, but this is for any business owner. From that concept.
Yes, agreed. From the financial advisor standpoint, so when I was thinking about it, so especially the last, 4 years have been just like white hot with M&A. It seems like every 5 seconds you turn around, somebody else has bought somebody else. So it would seem like in this environment where everybody's trying to maximize what their practice is like, that all the better to be able to have those tools and metrics straight in front of you so that, rather than having to either give up on it or B, go look for it a little more. You have everything that you need.
Right. Yeah, which again, I think is great. You'll be able to confidently make decisions because you have all of the data and the information. Because I think without data, even for me, I'm getting back into golf and I'm a big geek in more ways than one. I know this might not surprise you, but I track every single golf shot with an app and a tool called AtoZ is what it is one of the brands. It's really cool. And what it'll do is it'll give me all of this data and then give me objectively, hey, what part of your game sucks the most? And then I could be like, oh, okay. Because sometimes as even golfers or business owners, we might think, oh, I didn't hit the ball or I didn't putt well today. Like that was my problem. But then when we actually look at the data, it wasn't a putting problem. It was your shots onto the green were actually the issue. So if we're running blind, we might just think, oh, well, I need to go work on putting. When in reality, we could have been above average putting, but something else was actually the real cause. And again, same thing whenever we're looking at insights in whether it's our personal finances using, of course, my favorite tool, Allowance, shout out to them, or a business dashboard like this, we need that data, that relevant data to make confident decisions.
Absolutely. So that actually reminded me, earlier this week, the FPA did a LinkedIn Live about the new competency model, which we discussed 2 weeks ago on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And so the advisor, who was a past president, Nicolette, if I'm not mistaken, was talking about how he was surprised that he had sort of deficits in one area, and he would have said, that's my strongest suit. And so to your point, I feel like sometimes we have a hard time judging ourselves. There's no mirror in front of us, but we have some kind of perception. But you're right. Without that data, it could be incorrect.
Yeah, exactly. Because then we're solely based on anecdotal evidence, which I think there can absolutely be value in anecdotal evidence. But if that's the only thing that we're ever making decisions on, right, like we're just simply going to get some stuff wrong.
Yeah. So I am actually going to throw a curveball at you because now that we're here, I should have had the news about our good friend Jordan Haines from Relevance on this podcast. If you would like to describe as a good friend and also a super Relevance user what's going on with him and what he's up to, let's give him a shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jordan Haines, make sure that you follow him on LinkedIn. That's going to be his main platform. I just launched his company called Advisor Relevance. And again, I don't want to butcher it, so I'll at least kind of keep it as high level as possible, but definitely just go check out Jordan, Haines on LinkedIn. But he's super passionate about advisors in general, but really helping advisors create just a relevant client experience where as advisors, we think all the time, oh, this is super valuable. We need to do all these value adds. We need to be doing more and more and more. And oftentimes we forget to stop and actually ask our paying clients, hey, would this be valuable to you? Or if we do, it's us asking. And even if I asked you, Allie, a question like, hey, do you think this would be valuable? You might be like, oh yeah, sure. That sounds good. But only because I didn't ask it even in the right way. So would it actually truly add value? Now, of course, that depends on the thing. So what he's going to be able to do with firms from his experience at Dennis Advisors and talking to hundreds, if not thousands of advisors during his time at Elements, he's still going to host the Elementality podcast as well, but he's going to be able to help firm owners, larger firms really start to figure out their client experience, help them grow, help them scale, and truly deliver the value that their clients actually want. So again, go check him out on LinkedIn. He'll describe it way better than I just did there, but it's going to be really cool. And as one of his good friends, really excited for him and even all the things that he's going to be learning and all the geeky conversations that we're going to get to have behind the scenes. I'm even selfishly, if you will, looking forward to that.
Yeah. And thank you for letting me do that to you. I appreciate that. But yeah, so congratulations to Jordan. So what you were saying reminded me, I can kind of see what you're saying, that especially, so between the two of us, obviously we banter a decent amount, as anyone can tell from this podcast, but I could imagine you asking me, Allie, do you think XYZ is good? And my response then, given that, so the way that the question is structured is like, is that good? Would that be helpful to you? Well, theoretically, that doesn't sound like a bad thing, maybe, but versus a real true evaluation of, yeah, actually, like the 5 things that would make my financial life better are X, Y, and Z, and A and B, because I need 5 things. That would help.
Yeah, absolutely. And then having that objective third party, potentially even asking some of those questions could yield a different response. Also, because oftentimes as human beings in general, we don't always know what we want. Even us, so it's not even about just the questions, but then having that conversation and trying to get to the true meaning, because certain clients might say, okay, I want to work with an advisor. I want them to help me save on taxes. That's the functional job. That's the functional pain point. That's maybe why they initially reach out. That's their why. Sure. But then they get into a financial planning relationship and realize, oh, I've got this peace of mind. I've got more clarity. My advisor proactively reaches out to me on an ongoing basis. So I constantly feel seen and heard. And when they say that they can reach out, they're providing opportunities to reach out. So in that case, like the client's probably not just going to say, oh, I want someone to always be there for me. No, they wanted help with taxes, or they wanted help with investments or insurance. And then they almost experience that true value. So it's, as advisors, how do we lean into those things? Because I think I've mentioned this before. If I spend 5 hours working on something, but you really don't care about it and it doesn't add that much value, it doesn't matter that I spent 5 hours. In fact, that's actually a waste of time because it didn't add much value to you, and I just wasted 5 hours of my time as well. So I'm constantly looking for ways on at least having theories on what do I think at least clients actually care about. And then even when I do have an initiative, I kind of have likely a deeper meaning for, it's like sending out monthly client emails. A lot of advisors are like, why in the world would you ever possibly do that? I have a pretty good system in place right now, but really the main goal that I'm trying to accomplish there is right now, no one can say, oh, I never hear from my advisor. You're going to hear from me 12 times a year minimum. We're probably going to talk a couple more times besides that, but I'm like, at minimum, you're going to hear from me. And I don't think it's the report that I'm sending out each month that's valuable, not even necessarily the analysis. It's just when I say that I'm going to be available, I am actually going to be available, because I'm going to communicate with you on a frequent basis. It makes me feel more confident in my service, just knowing that, hey, I've reached out to this client 15 days ago, 30 days ago. And again, what I'm truly solving for is, because I've had clients that will respond to an email, totally not related. Say it's an email on insurance, or respond about something totally different. And that's what I want. That's what I love. Because now it's like, how do I say that I'm accessible. I say that you've got access to me and we can have conversations. But oftentimes when someone says, hey, call me whenever, when do you call them? Never, because they've just made it too open. But if it's, hey, call me when you want, or every single email is, hey, and if you have questions, let's schedule a call, and you get 12 of those every single year, that at least hopefully makes people feel like I truly mean it when I say that people can ask me questions.
Yeah. You can ask him questions. So I feel like we just had some fancy feelings. Just you wait till I have some fancy feelings.
Ooh, I'm ready. I'm ready for Allie's fancy feelings today.
So they may or may not be good fancy feelings. Our second piece of news, which is actually technically our third piece of news because I snuck in a second one in there. Wells Fargo found that 71% of parents with kids ages 5 to 17 give them allowances. The average weekly allowance is $37. Among the points in the study that I found interesting was that 51% of parents struggle with how they talk to their kids about money in a way that they will understand. So I have fancy feelings, but maybe I should let you go first.
My wife and I don't have kids yet, and I work with clients that have kids. So no, I really don't have any fancy feelings on this one. So I'm going to tee this up to you. What are your thoughts? What are your big takeaways? Even how do you talk about money with your kids? So the floor is yours. And I might ask you another question or two, depending on what you're saying.
Well, I realize now I'm putting myself up for judgment on my parenting. So I may or may not be actually prepared for what this is going to unleash on myself, but I'm going to do it anyway because I did it to myself. Actually, among the ways that I've explained money to my kids is, so I had to bring Cecilia one day with me to deposit a physical check, which we will talk about in our next piece of news. But so explaining to her why we were here and whatnot, I said, well, this is the money that mum, which is what my children call me. Please don't make fun of me. This is how mum makes money. Do you know how much money mum gets to keep? Do you know how much money you get to keep? You get to keep this much. So again, not really fair because, obviously the house is for all of us, but just trying to impress upon them that it's important that I work because I don't know for anybody else who's either has kids or is a single parent and has to struggle between, do I work? Do I not work? Do I hang out with the kids? It's a very big struggle for me. I feel bad about I'm not making enough quality time for you, but also at the same time, if I don't do my work, then we don't do the cool things that we do. So yesterday, for instance, I took the kids to see Bluey in the city. And so that was part of the conversation of, well, if mom has to work. Did you want to go to see Bluey? Did you like it? Did you like last year when we went to Disney World? I have to work. Sorry. So those are among my fancy feelings.
I mean, hopefully no one's judging anyone else's parenting style. Because again, not that I am an expert in any stretch. I'm not a parent yet, but I know that there's going to be many ways to do something. There's not one single right way to do it all. I at least do have at least the understanding of that. But no, that's really cool. I mean, that is clearly showing that there's, that hard work, that diligent work aspect on, why are you sitting at your computer for 8 hours a day and sometimes more? It's like, oh, well, it's so that we can afford the house that we live in, to do the fun things and go see Bluey, go to Disney World, those types of fun things. So what of your kids' responses, what were they like once you shared that with them?
I think at first she didn't necessarily buy that, but then I felt a little bad. So my daughter parroting back to me that like, how much money does mom get to keep? And it's funny. So even when we had our dog, so I would say, like we get to keep this much, like I get this much, he gets this much, you guys get this much. Really not the best way of explaining it, but also trying to get the thought across there that if you see me, I don't tend to have a lot of extras. I don't really shop a lot and whatnot. But yes, she has parroted back to me, and then I felt a little bad about it, and now we're just running with it.
Okay, nice, fair. And then maybe just for the listeners, how old are your kids, just so they know their approximate ages?
So my daughter is 6 and my son is 8.5. Also, for better or worse, so I've instituted a new rule around here. So I don't know about you, I'm a stickler for people who leave the lights on. It is super duper annoying and it's just wasteful. So I explained to my daughter yesterday, anytime that you guys leave a light on and I turn it off for you, it's $1.
Ooh, okay.
I had to take $4 from my son yesterday. I don't think I can keep doing it with him. I don't think that he has an appreciation for it or that money would actually be some kind of consequence that would make him stop leaving the lights on. But my daughter is definitely a little more mindful of the fact that if you leave the light on, I'm taking $1 from you.
Okay, interesting. And how do they typically get that money? Are you paying them an allowance? Or?
No, I haven't done the allowance thing. So personally, I have to get the kids to let's do chores and then earn an allowance, which actually could work out pretty well. My daughter loves to wipe down the floors. So at the very least, I can get her to do that. But no.
It's a cheap house cleaner right there.
I know, right? I'm very lucky. So no allowance yet, but they get their money. So that's usually, it's either birthday money or Easter egg hunt money or tooth fairy money. Yes. That's the money that hasn't gone toward the account that you manage.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Nice. I was just curious how they got it, but so that makes sense. Yeah.
Right now, they probably have more disposable cash than I have. Let's just be honest.
Well, they have 100% profit, to your point earlier.
Well, yes, until I start taking away because they leave on the light.
Yeah, until the percentage gets eaten up by keeping the lights on.
Yeah, yes. So I don't know if anybody has opinions on this. I don't think that it was really a good idea, but at the time it felt like a good one.
Yeah. Right. Well, I guess, again, just like in finance, my big thing, even in things that I'm not an expert and I know hardly anything about parenting, I'm pretty confident, not one right way to do things. So what works for you and your family, your household might not work for someone else's and vice versa. And guess what? that's okay, right? And we don't need to be judging people for, oh, this parent's doing this and that parent's doing that, unless it's like something real bad or whatnot. Don't think the audience that we're talking to, that applies. Let each person do their own thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You obviously are very good at this. You will be skilled at it if that ever comes to be the case. So getting back to the paper check situation. So what sparked this piece of news, there was an executive order 14247 that was eliminating or at least greatly minimizing the paper checks that are being distributed by the government. So apparently last year there were 36 million paper checks issued by the federal government. Which, I mean, granted, given the population, totally makes sense. But also, I don't know about you, even yesterday, I had to feed a check into the ATM. It's not like this is handwritten, this is typed information. It still can't read what the number is. What is this? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, we're still doing paper checks. Granted, it's the government, so I wasn't terribly surprised, I guess. I shouldn't have been too shocked. But right, I mean, I think even from like our very first few podcast episodes, almost everything was about efficiency. We had stuff about how many minutes on average paper documentation was taking. So, I mean, same thing with checks. Right now you have people that can get upset about, oh, well, Stripe or whatever payment processor is charging me 3% or 3.5% or whatever that number is, but checks are free. But they're not, because if you have to mail them, well, there's a cost, but then also someone has to physically, like in your case, you had to drive to the bank, put it in the ATM. Now, again, we're not talking about this as challenging, and hopefully the majority of your clients don't pay you via check. So this is hopefully more of a one-off. So it makes it's not that big of a deal. But if all of our clients, both of us, paid us in physical checks, okay, great. We can save 3% from a processing fee. But how much time are we going to have to spend, or how much are we going to have to pay someone to just deposit these things for us? So a lot of times that's like the hidden inefficiencies of checks. Like, oh, it's free. There's no ACH fee. Yeah, but there's a human being fee. It takes someone time to do this. So yeah, I'm glad we're moving towards not paper checks.
Yes. So to your point, I've always kind of wondered, is that fee, for instance? So I take it it's really we had to transfer this money to you, so there was a cost associated with that, and you were moving it. But I don't know. In my head, anyway, it's like we're moving money around. Why does money not just move?
I guess someone had to build the systems or the network. I think that's oftentimes what you're paying for with payment processors, or like the fees to MasterCard, Visa, Amex, etc. They're almost building out this network, and I mean, right now you're going to pay it. I mean, there's almost no options. I mean, actually, my wife and I did go to ended up being a cash only business whenever we were out of town. And quite frankly, I'm not a big fan of that because we don't really carry cash. But I will share, there was a very kind gentleman that heard us say that we didn't have any cash. He's like, oh, here, get some ice. It was an ice cream shop. Aww. Get some ice. You guys get some ice cream. Like, we can Venmo you. We'll do this. I want to teach generosity to my son. He had a young son with him there too. So we're like, okay, fine. We'll do that. And it was super nice. And it was pretty good soft serve ice cream too. So that did at least provide the opportunity for us to be the receivers of generosity in this case. And he was able to teach his son, and it was overall a nice experience. But yeah, I would have preferred at least if we could just swipe our card. But it was, again, very, very nice.
And good parenting lesson right there. So shout out to you, good parent. Yeah, exactly. I hear you on the cash businesses. And I hate how, so obviously then usually they'll have like an ATM somewhat nearby or whatnot because,
which then charges a fee.
Right. Because it's never your bank. It's always some rando.
Yep. Yeah. I have the money to pay you, I promise. I'm not hurting for money for an ice cream cone here. Please let me pay you. Well, I mean, we're starting to see it even when people say there's a cash bar at a wedding, or even for tips, if there's an open bar at a wedding, for example. At least the last several that I've been to, almost all the bartenders are having their Venmo up for the tips, because they know, I mean, I feel like one of the first rules of business is make it as easy as possible for people to pay you.
Yes.
Right? Because make it easy to pay. Because if you start going through an online checkout, for example, and it's a pain in the butt, you're just going to not do it. Which is why, again, I'm fine to pay Stripe my 3%, 3.5% on certain transactions, because I don't have to think about it. They've got the infrastructure in place. And then two, as a business owner, guess who sets our own prices? We do. So if we're really worried about that 3.5%, then maybe we already bake that into the cost of our services. There's all sorts of ways around it besides the paper route that I'm, as you can tell, not a fan of.
Yes. But similarly, when I take the kids for their haircuts, it'll be the same thing. Every hairdresser has their Venmo or whatnot up there. Thank goodness, because the thought didn't occur to me to bring cash.
Right.
Even though I've been how many times.
Right. Unless you're in a serving business where you're receiving cash tips all the time. Short of if we sell something on Facebook Marketplace, okay, yeah, we might have cash, although sometimes people would pay Venmo for that. And then when we go on an all-inclusive trip, we want to make sure that we have cash for tips, but that might be one trip to the bank per year to pull out some money, or use a debit card at Walmart or wherever to get some money out for a very, very specific purpose. But yeah, I cannot even tell you the last time I paid cash for something that wasn't a tip on a vacation. That's not true. I did on the golf course. I think I did. I spent some money for a couple drinks for my father-in-law and me. Aww. Yeah, I did. I had some cash. That was it. Aww. But they still also do offer swipe and card and Apple Pay. So
yes. What a good son-in-law you are.
Yeah. He probably bought the first round, to be fair. So it was, but I'll take it. We had a fun time.
Get you brownie points here, dude.
I appreciate it.
Anytime. Our last piece of news, so speaking of things that we need to make much more convenient, Oneday, which is a Canadian life insurer, now they have applicants completing one comprehensive questionnaire. So rather than getting we need this paperwork and this paperwork and this paperwork, which we all hate. In addition to that, then with that information that's provided, the system automatically figures out which of the 5 different products that they have available the person qualifies for. Often there's a 24-hour turnaround versus multiple weeks. So again, speaking to efficiency and whatnot, I mean, I don't know why more of this isn't happening. Hopefully it will.
Especially in the insurance space, things move real slow. A horror story that I have, well, it wasn't horror for anyone else but me, but it was technically a paper document, and now I'm a location independent practice. So what I had to do was take the paper document, effectively scan it in, or I think I might have at least got a PDF, but it technically required a signature. My clients across the country, like, I'm not going to ship them or mail them 50 to 60 pages. Also, where it's kind of like the doctor's office forms where you have to fill out probably your birthday like 17 times for whatever reason on that application. So I had to go in and manually, I don't know how much you use DocuSign or something familiar or something similar to that, building out all of the fields by hand is what I did for this massive, I'm not even kidding, Allie. It was like 50 or 60 pages. It was for a simple term life insurance policy. The most basic, the most simple form of life insurance, I'd argue, that there is out there. Wow. And it was all these pages, and it took me forever to get through it all. And then I'm pretty sure we at least got one NIGO, not in good order, which is the worst thing ever when you hear those words or you see that pop up in an email. NIGO means you got to maybe ask the client to sign something again, which is the worst. I hate doing that. Hasn't happened recently, knock on wood, but in this case it did. So then I had to build some more fields and send it out again, all for, I think I made like $40 a month maybe on that policy for one whole year. So I did all this work. Now, granted, it was in the best interest of the client. I'm not like, I wish I wouldn't have done it, but there's got to be a better way. And since I've partnered with more insurance companies that have a much more simple online application process for both, I'm okay to spend a little bit extra of my time, but I want this to be as simple and as frictionless as possible for the client. If I have to do extra work, no problem. If they have to do extra work, now I'm not happy about it at the company. So unfortunately, my process and the companies that I work for now are not like that and have a much smoother process, but it has taken years. The fact that this is news. Oh, by the way, we're making this online application. We're 2025. What are we talking about? How is that even news?
I know, right? Well, apparently this is hot news in that kind of sphere. So the company, the 50 to 60 page document, was this an obscure life insurance company? Or
no, it's one of the big ones. Everyone would know it.
That's
probably gotten better. That was in 2021. I think most carriers since, right, I know it wasn't that long ago, but I think most carriers at this point do offer some version of e-signature or online application. But then there's still others that they'll have an online application, but it's really bad. Like I had clients go through, like, they thought we had signed everything even. So everyone had signed stuff electronically through their own system. And then I reached back out like a week later. I hadn't heard anything. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Yeah, it looks like you're done, but actually you're not. You need to send them this one more thing. And was anyone going to let me know? What do you mean you acknowledge that it looks like it's done, but it's not? Why are we needing to sign stuff? So even that one was electronic. What is going on? Yeah, so that's honestly one of my big things. If you're not easy to deal with as an insurance company, there are so many carriers, especially for term life insurance, that is for the most part a commodity. Make sure that they're, the insurance carrier is a good rating. I'm not worried about these big companies folding anytime soon. So as long as they're a big company, good rating, they're almost all the same price. I'm going to use the one that my clients have better experience with. And I also have a better experience with them. And they get covered way faster. So even this that they're talking about getting covered potentially in 24 hours, that's awesome because so many people acknowledge that they need something like term life insurance, but just don't do it on their own. Oftentimes it does end up taking an advisor to help push that forward. And when there's all sorts of friction on the client's end, might just drop it all together. and now you're not covered, and now it's not as good of a financial plan. It's not being implemented, and all sorts of other things. So yeah, very happy that we are moving into a more efficient online type style.
Yay,
Big fan of that.
My goodness. So as you can tell, we have lots of fancy feelings about lots of different things on this
We do.
podcast. Anyway, thank you so much for doing this. As always, Brandon, I hope that you have a fabulous 4th of July, which is when this podcast will be coming out. And enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, happy 4th to you as well. Have an amazing weekend, and we'll talk next week.
Sounds good.